على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
حقا لا إله إلا الله المقام محمود الذي إن الحمد لله نحمده تعالى ونستعينه ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح للأمة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده وارض اللهم عن الصحابة والتابعين وتابعيهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Dear brothers and sisters, السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. The genocide in Gaza continues, and now Lebanon is part of the onslaught. And as we raise our hands and ask Allah Azza wa Jal to alleviate their suffering, at the same time we feel guilty for being, after 414 days, for being unable to do something significant, because we're all doing as much as we can, anything significant that could make a difference. And many among us saw an opportunity in the last election, the last round of election, to do something. Some came out with the slogan, punishing the incumbents for what they did. Others came out with different slogans, vote for the opposition, vote for third party. The community was split in many different ways. Some didn't even participate. And today I have two messages. One message to those who participated, and one to those who didn't. For the ones who participated, I believe that it's not appropriate for us to be attacking one another and to be accusing one another of being wrong. For even those among us who were wrong, we don't know their intention. I heard one of the speakers the other day on YouTube talking about a friend of his, and I'm using his words, who voted for the orange man. You all know who the orange man is. And he said, I was mad at him until I sat down with him and realized that his intention is to punish the other side. Now, if that was his intention, I mean, this guy does not approve of the policies of the orange man. We know his history. We know where he stands with regards to Muslims. We know all that. So how could anybody vote for him? So this brother, while he was this imam, while discussing the issue with the other brother, he said, you know, who am I to accuse him without knowing his intention? So the point I'm trying to say here, let's all remember the ayah in Surah Shura, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم شرع لكم من الدين ما وصى به نوحا والذي أوحينا إليك, and then at the end, أن أقيموا الدين ولا تتفرقوا فيه. We cannot attempt to establish the deen at the same time be divisive among one another. That's not the way to do it. The Quran forbid us from doing that. And notice Surah Ash-Shura, I mentioned this in the last khutbah, is a Makki surah. And it's all about the concept of shura and consultation and having a dialogue long before there was an Islamic State, in the early days of Mecca, so that we can understand that the whole issue of deliberations is a foundational issue in Islam, that we need to have these conversations with one another. Now, my second message, so that's the only message I have to those who participated. Jazakumullahu khairan. Whichever choice you made, it's behind us. Let's learn from it and move forward. For those who did not participate, I like the categorization of one of the imams. I saw it somewhere. He said, you have to be, if you didn't participate, you have to be one of 4 types. So I'm going to address all 4 types. And it's very important that we do that. But before I do that, I want to kind of like quantify the whole phenomena of non-voting. At one point, the number of those who voted in the last election and didn't vote this time was 15 million people. And many among them are Muslims. So this is very significant. It's not that, 1 or 2% didn't vote. 15 million people did not vote. So what are the reasons? Number one, I'll address them in brief. Each one of them requires a whole khutbah. The first one, and this is really significant because it's pervasive, it's been with us for at least 50 years. I've heard the debate about this, wallahi, going back to the early 80s. And that is the permissibility of participation in the political process. شرعية المشاركة في العمل السياسي. This has been an issue for a long, long time. And I'm not going to tell you the opinions of the different sides. I just want to conclude with the opinion of one of the biggest scholars that ever lived in the United States, a friend of Sheikh Mohammad Al-Ghazali. I just found out yesterday from Sheikh Mohammad Musa, which is Sheikh Taha Jabir Al-Alwani rahimahullah. He passed away recently, in 2016. Taha Jabir Al-Alwani was asked about this issue. Ya Sheikh, مسموح لنا نصوت ولا لا? The simple question, are we allowed to participate or not? He said the question is wrong. He said you have to reword the question. The question should be appropriately framed. It should be, Ya Sheikh, what about a minority Muslim community living in a majority non-Muslim community? Does that sound familiar? That's us. Living with a majority non-Muslim community that allows them to practice their deen, to establish institutions, to worship as they please, to participate in the decision-making process and policies and so on and so forth. Oh, better yet, and to also elect their leaders and even themselves run for office. Should they take part in it? Or should they say, thank you very much? The answer becomes very obvious. Taha Jabir Al-Alwani, rahimahullah, by reframing the question, made it a rational decision. It's very hard to argue with it. The system says to you, you can choose how you are governed. You can't say no to that. So that's, in a nutshell, that's the best answer that I can give by borrowing what Sheikh Taha Jabir Al-Alwani said in a book that was published in 2004. If anybody wants to have the exact quotation, I can share it with you. That was his fatwa. The second reason why many people did not participate is that they thought it doesn't make a difference. You hear that all the time. It doesn't make a difference. Whoever is going to get elected is going to get elected. And to these people, I say, look, unless you are a political philosopher with graduate degrees in political science, who is aware of all the different statistics and studies over the last 50, 60 years and how they went, and the margins of who won and who failed at the federal and state and local level, unless you are all of those things, please listen to the experts. Look at the numbers. Ya ikhwa, I've been in this country for 50 years, and I've participated in many of these campaigns, elections, all the way back to President Carter. I missed Nixon. Many of us, the old-timers, my brother Abu Rabhi probably remembers this, 2000, when Bush, the young one, ran against Al Gore. Now, we all remember what happened with Bush and what he did and all of that, but very few remember that he won by 537 votes. Florida made him president, and at that time, one of our scholars, Samuel Arian, had conducted negotiations with Bush, and Bush was going to eliminate the secret evidence law that was passed during the Clinton administration. And he promised to do it. In an open debate on the air, a debate that was aired to the entire nation, he said, when I'm president, I'm going to do away with the secret evidence law. And that was supposed to take place at 3 o'clock on the afternoon of September 11. Luck would have it that we had the attacks of September 11, and it never happened. But there was a good reason why probably 75% of the Muslims voted at that time for Bush. And he won by 537 votes. A single household from Turmasaya down there probably put him in office. So don't tell me that your vote doesn't make a difference. There has been elections. There's a guy in Bergen County who lost the election by one single vote. He was running for council or for board of education. Brother Rasul or somebody, I forgot his name. He lost by a single vote. If one person going to vote grabbed his brother or his son or his wife, this guy would have probably been in office. So don't tell me it doesn't make a difference. If it doesn't make a difference, why do they put so many obstacles in front of poor people and people of color in poor neighborhoods to prevent them from voting? Why is it that since the days of the civil rights movement, since Jim Crow, that the gist of the fight of civil rights of the African-American brothers and minorities in general has been around the issue of voting? They will do everything in their capacity to stop us from voting, and we do them a very easy service by saying, don't even work so hard. We're not going to go anywhere. Don't bother. So don't tell me that it doesn't make a difference, because if it doesn't make a difference, they won't do anything. They'll actually encourage us to vote. They'll make it easier for us. The third possibility, there are some among us that really don't care. They really don't care. They don't care what happens. And I hope and pray to Allah Azza wa Jal that they are a minority, that they are really, really a small minority. They don't care what happens in Gaza. They don't care what happens in Palestine. They don't care what happens in Syria. Yemen doesn't matter to them. I'm an American. I live here. I was born here. Or maybe I ran away from that environment. I don't want to have nothing to do with it. And to these people, I have a simple answer. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in one hadith says, مَنْ لَمْ يَهْتَمَّ بِأَمْرِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فَلَيْسَ مِنْهُمْ. How could you be one of us when you don't care? If you are part of this community, you have to proactively announce yourself as you are part of it. Feel the pain of the community. Participate in the defense of the community. And point the blame at those people who are hurting this community. These are the minimum 4 required for you to actually have the right to belong to the community. There is a lot of literature on how one belongs and doesn't. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, مَثَلُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ فِي تَوَادُهُمْ وَتَرَحُمِهِمْ كَمَثَلِ الْجَسَدِ الْوَاحِدِ. We all know this hadith. We should be like one body, that if one part of it aches, the rest of it has to ache and stay up with fever. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. And there is one more issue right out of the Quran. There's a sunnah, ya ikhwa, in the Quran. One of the social laws that the Quran is full of social laws. Abd Karim Zaidan, rahimahullah, the Iraqi scholar, wrote a book called Sunnatullahi fil Afradi wal Umam wal Jama'at, 247 sunnah He extracted 247 laws out of the Quran. And one of them is Sunnatut Tadafu'. I've always struggled trying to find a translation, a correct translation for the word tadafu'. Now, the word dafa'a means to push. Tadafu' means pushing and shoving. Some translated it as checkmating. I was listening to a very long 3-hour podcast by Tamim Barghouthi, and it dawned on me that listening to him, what it really means is resistance. The best translation for Sunnatut Tadafu' is the law of resistance. And you'll understand it from the context of the ayat. In Surah Al-Baqarah, after Allah Azza wa Jal tells us about the confrontation between Talut and Jalut and Sayyidina Dawood alayhi salam, قتل داود جالوت, Dawood alayhi salam killed Jalut. And then immediately after the conclusion of that whole sequence, Allah Azza wa Jal tells us, وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضِ. If it wasn't for tadafu', or in this case, if it wasn't for resistance to the tyrant, there would be corruption, there would be tumult. We hear people expressing it nowadays by saying a unipolar world is a corrupt world. At least during the Cold War, you had two superpowers, each one of them afraid of the other one. Each one of them knows that if it struck the other one will strike back, and the first one to strike may not even survive the response. That kept the world at peace. We came very close to destroying the entire earth in the 60s during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Those of us who are old enough to remember know that we came really close to a nuclear holocaust in the 60s. And the reason why it didn't happen is because of this law that Allah Azza wa Jal put in place. So here, this ayah tells us, in the context of describing what happened between Talut and Jalut, that historical event where Sayyidina Dawood played an important role in leading the Ummah, the Quran gives us another example from Surah Al-Hajj. In Surah Al-Hajj, where the Muslims were given permission to defend themselves and to fight back, أذن للذين يقاتلون بأنهم ظلموا وإن الله على نصرهم لقدير. Surah Al-Hajj, ayah 22, Allah Azza wa Jal tells us that He told the Prophet ﷺ and his companions for the first 13 years plus, they were not allowed to fight back. They were only asked to endure. And when the Sahaba asked the Prophet ﷺ to ask Allah to help them, Prophet ﷺ says, وَلَكِنَّكُمْ you're rushing. Wait, everything will take place in time. So here Allah Azza wa Jal tells us, after giving them permission, why they're given permission to fight back. وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ, same ayah. If it wasn't for resistance, if it wasn't for Allah Azza wa Jal giving people the opportunity to check one another, what would happen? لَهُدِّمَتْ صَوَامِعُ وَبِيَعٌ وَصَلَوَاتٌ وَمَسَاجِدٌ يُذْكَرُ فِيهَا اسْمُ اللَّهِ كَثِيرًا. Have we seen more destruction of masajid as we have seen recently? Whether the 1,300 masjid destroyed by the Serbs in Bosnia, or now the hundreds and hundreds of masajid, almost 80% of the masajid in Gaza have been destroyed and leveled to the ground. It's like their enemy number one is the masjid and the school, the university. First thing they bombed, ya ikhwa, in Gaza was the university complex. They don't want any educated people. And then the masajid, because that's where people learn to read and understand the Quran. So these are three. I'll speak about the fourth one in a minute. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم فيا فوز المستغفرين. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. There's a group that may not have participated for a simple reason. That is really, really simple. And that is laziness, al-kasal. They're just doing something else. And for these people, I just want to remind them of one of the dua of the Prophet ﷺ. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, in one of his books, spent quite a bit of time explaining this dua and what it means. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والحزن وأعوذ بك من العجز والكسل وأعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل وأعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال. The part that concerns us here, العجز والكسل. العجز is to be unable, to have a handicap, to be unable to do something. Al-kasal is to have the ability to do it, but not have the willpower to do it, to be lazy. And the end result is the same. Whether you are disabled or whether you are unwilling, the end result is the same. They say people who don't read and people who don't know how to read are the same. If you know how to read and you don't read, you are no different than somebody who doesn't know how to read. And here's the same thing. Al-kasal, ya ikhwa, is something that the Prophet ﷺ prayed and asked Allah Azza wa Jal to protect him from. So in conclusion, why then do many people not participate? I think part of the reason, this is my opinion now, part of the reason is that a lot of people don't understand the concept of political participation. And here I will give you the definition so that you'll probably agree with me. Ya ikhwa, political participation is very simple. It has two parts. Most think it's only one part. It has two parts. To elect public officials or to influence what they do once they're elected. Now we throw the baby with the bathwater. We don't elect tyrants because zalimeen, and if you pick a zalim, then you are a zalim. Fine, don't. But what about when it comes to what they do? That's part of the game. That's part of the political process. And I'll illustrate what I mean by that. Many of you don't know that in this country, people think that the election is only once every 4 years. In this country, we think there's one government. There's 87,000 governments in this country. The federal is one, 50 state, and then you go down to the level of the counties, cities, towns, school districts, and everything else. Brothers and sisters, you may not know that in New Jersey alone, there's 562 governments. 562 governments. And some would say, why are you telling me this? I'm telling you this because it touches you and your family without you knowing it. Many don't realize that by abdicating the right to influence the process and to elect and to influence the process, you are in essence saying, and I apologize for being harsh and graphic. In essence, what you are saying is, I'm okay with a boy who calls himself girl, and for that matter, even they call themselves cats and dogs. It doesn't matter. Gender fluidity means you are allowed to call yourself whatever you want. For a boy, a 6'2" boy, man, to walk into their girl's bathroom where your daughter is inside, your sister is inside, and that's okay with you. The law allows them to do that. The school districts can pass legislation at the city level. It's something many of us don't know. Back home where we came from, there's Wazarat al-Tarbiyah wal-Ta'lim. There's the Ministry of Education. They make all the rules, and you get to follow. We don't have such a thing here. Department of Education here has no value whatsoever. Actually, one of the first things Trump wants to do is to abolish the Department of Education, Department of Environment Protection, Department of this, Department of that. They want to turn everything local. Education in this country is run by the municipalities at the lowest level of government. It's within your reach and mind. Any community with a majority of Muslims or any ethnic group can control who runs the Board of Education. It's a simple election. And by choosing those people, you get to choose their policies. You get to choose which books your kids read. You get to toss out a book that makes your child suspect whether he's a boy or a girl. There's an agenda behind all of that. and we allow it to happen, we have the ability to stop it. And by not participating in the political process, you are giving up on your right to decide what your children learn and who goes to the bathroom with your daughter and your son, for that matter, and who teaches them. That's within our reach. And wallahi, ya ikhwa, we have no excuse. You don't want to choose the president, that's fine. But what about your local elections? I hope and pray to Allah Azza wa Jal that you heed my message, that you understand my intention. If I said it right, that's from Allah, and if I said it wrong, astaghfirullah. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين وعلي بفضلك كلمة الحق والدين ووفقنا لما تحب وترضاه يا رب العالمين. اللهم يا رب من أراد بالإسلام والمسلمين خيرا فوفقه إلى كل خير، ومن أراد بالإسلام والمسلمين سوءا فخذه أخذ عزيز مقتدر. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم واستغفروه يغفر لكم. وأنت يا أخي أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
استقيموا واعتدلوا وثابكم الله. هاي شغال. استقيم. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. إن للمتقين مفازا حدائق وأعنابا وكواعب أترابا وكأسا دهاقا لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا كذابا جزاء من ربك عطاء حسابا. رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما الرحمن لا يملكون منه خطابا. يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة صفا لا يتكلمون إلا من أذن له الرحمن وقال صوابا. ذلك اليوم الحق، فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه مآبا. إنا أنذرناكم عذابا قريبا يوم ينظر المرء ما قدمت يداه ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم. أشهد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد صليت على إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا حميد مجيد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. استغفر الله. استغفر الله.
Assalamu alaikum. Just one announcement. Inshallah, December 7th, Saturday, is our annual fundraising dinner. It'll start at 6:30, inshallah. So bring your whole family. It'll be a nice night, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum. December 7th.